The planet had once been alive with color and sound. Cities glimmered under twin suns, and life thrived in every corner. But now all that remained were ruins, ash, and silence. Lyra wandered through the broken streets, her footsteps echoing against shattered buildings. Her people had been gone for months, victims of an unstoppable army that swept across the planet with fire and weapons far beyond her comprehension. She had no family, no friends, no one left to turn to. The silence pressed against her chest, heavier than any weight she had ever carried. She moved cautiously, avoiding the broken vehicles and crumbling structures. Every corner might hide danger. Every shadow might conceal someone waiting to finish what had already been started. Hunger clawed at her stomach, but fear was a sharper edge. She found scraps of food here and there, scavenging through abandoned stores and homes, careful not to attract attention. Nights were the worst. The darkness reminded her of how alone she truly was, how fragile her existence had become. One evening, as the second sun dipped behind the jagged horizon, Lyra stumbled into a narrow alley. She crouched behind a fallen wall, listening to the distant roar of a collapsing building and the hiss of shifting debris. Then she heard it, a faint, steady whirring sound. At first she froze, expecting another human soldier or worse, one of the mechanical drones that had hunted her people. But the sound was different, purposeful and careful. Curiosity pushed her closer. From behind a cracked doorway, she peered out. There, in the middle of the street, stood a man. He was human, tall, with dark hair and sharp eyes that scanned the area constantly. He worked with tools, repairing a small drone that had clearly been damaged in the chaos. He did not notice her at first. He moved with careful precision, gentle hands, and a calm confidence that made Lyra hesitate. He wasn't like the soldiers who had destroyed her life. He wasn't aggressive or demanding. Lyra watched him for hours, hidden in the shadows. He scavenged supplies from the ruins, repaired small devices, and even tended to an injured alien animal he found lying in the rubble. She had never seen a human act with such care. It made her chest ache in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe not all beings were cruel. Maybe someone could be trusted. Days passed, and Lyra observed him from a distance. She learned his routines. He woke before dawn, explored the city carefully, repaired what he could, and avoided danger when possible. Lyra began leaving small offerings for him, bits of food or small trinkets she found, always careful to stay hidden. She wanted to see if he noticed, if he appreciated the gesture, but she remained unseen. The act gave her a strange comfort. She felt connected, even if only indirectly, to another living being. Then came the night that changed everything. Lyra had been searching for water near the collapsed remains of a high-rise building. She misjudged the stability of the floor and fell through a weakened section, debris pinning her leg. Panic surged through her as she struggled, the metal and concrete pressing against her, threatening to crush her. She screamed, a raw, desperate sound that echoed through the empty streets. Ethan, the human, was nearby. He heard the cry immediately and dropped his tools, sprinting toward the sound. Lyra tried to free herself, but the debris would not budge. Fear threatened to overwhelm her. She had survived alone for months, and yet now she faced death in a way she could not escape. Then strong hands gripped her, lifting the weight from her leg and pulling her free. Lyra gasped, clutching her leg as she fell back into his arms. He held her steady, his face calm but concerned. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Lyra nodded, too stunned to speak. He examined her quickly, checking for injuries and applying makeshift bandages with tools and materials he carried. The touch of someone else, someone who cared, was almost unbearable. She felt tears sting her eyes but forced herself to stay silent. She had survived alone for so long, she wasn't sure how to handle being helped. After he finished tending to her, he offered a small smile. "I'm Ethan," he said simply. "I'm here to help." Lyra's heart tightened at the words. She had not heard kindness in so long, and the sound of it made her chest ache. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but her voice was weak. Instead, she nodded, unable to break the silence that had followed her for months. That night, they made a small camp in the remains of a fallen building. Lyra stayed close to Ethan, unsure whether to trust him completely but too tired to resist. She watched as he prepared a small fire using scraps of metal and fuel, and as the flames flickered, she realized she could relax for the first time in a long time. Over the next few days, Lyra slowly allowed herself to emerge from hiding. She followed Ethan at a distance, learning how he scavenged for food, found clean water, and avoided the dangerous patrols still roaming the planet. He was resourceful, brave, and careful. He did not demand anything from her, and he never pressured her to speak or explain herself. He simply existed as a constant, patient presence. Lyra began to speak in small fragments, telling Ethan pieces of her story, her family, her home, and the day the soldiers arrived. He listened without judgment, nodding and asking gentle questions. She discovered that humans, despite their flaws, could have compassion, patience, and courage in equal measure. Each story she shared lightened the weight she carried inside her. One evening, while they were scavenging for supplies in the remains of an old marketplace, a sudden tremor shook the buildings around them. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, and Lyra froze in fear. A large piece of rubble was about to crush her, but Ethan acted instinctively, pulling her into his arms and shielding her from the impact. She felt the warmth of his body, the steady strength that kept her safe. In that moment, fear melted into something else: relief, trust, and a fragile sense of connection she had not felt in years. After the danger passed, Lyra stayed close to Ethan as they made their way back to camp. She felt a strange mix of emotions: gratitude, admiration, and something deeper she could not yet name. She realized that Ethan had become more than a protector. He had become a lifeline. For the first time, she felt that she was not entirely alone in the universe. That night, as the twin suns set and the sky turned deep shades of purple and gold, Lyra watched the stars appear. She felt a quiet hope stirring inside her, a possibility that life could continue, that she could survive and maybe even thrive. She glanced at Ethan, who was repairing a small device by the firelight, and felt a spark of something she had thought lost forever: trust. In the quiet moments that followed, Lyra allowed herself to lean slightly against him, testing the safety of being near another being. Ethan did not pull away. Instead, he continued his work, letting her presence rest alongside his. She realized that perhaps she could begin to believe in tomorrow again, that maybe she had found someone who could help her face the darkness without fear. For months, she had been alone. She had wandered, scavenged, and survived in silence. Now, with Ethan by her side, the ruins of her world did not feel quite as hopeless. The loneliness that had weighed so heavily on her heart began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism. She did not yet know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt that she was not entirely without hope. And as the night deepened, Lyra realized something she hadn't dared to believe: that she had found not just a protector but a companion. Someone who could stand by her in a world that had taken everything else. Someone who could pull her from the ashes of her past and into the warmth of something new. She had no one left, until a human pulled her into his arms. The wind tore across the barren landscape of Kalara, whipping red dust into the air and making it hard to see. Lyra crouched behind the jagged rocks, her heart hammering against her chest. The battle was over, or so she thought. Her fleet had been destroyed, her soldiers either dead or scattered, and now she was alone. Her breathing was heavy, each inhale tasting of fear and ash. She had grown up hearing stories about humans, tales of cruelty, violence, and merciless domination. To her, they were monsters. Now she had fallen into their hands, and she knew she was meant to die. When the humans appeared on the horizon, Lyra froze. Their armor glinted in the harsh sunlight, and their weapons were strange and terrifying. She could see their movements were coordinated, practiced, and lethal. The human commander, a tall man with a strong jaw and calm eyes, approached with measured steps. Lyra's body tensed, muscles coiled for the fight she knew she would not win. "Lyra Varen," the human said, his voice carrying easily across the dust. "You're coming with me." Lyra's jaw clenched. She had no weapon left, no way to fight, yet every instinct screamed at her to resist. She knew that humans executed prisoners, especially officers. She closed her eyes for a moment, bracing herself for the end. But when the human stopped in front of her, he did not raise his weapon. Instead, he knelt slightly, studying her. There was no anger in his expression, no hatred, only an intense focus that unsettled her. Why are you not killing me?" she asked, her voice shaking. The human's eyes held hers, steady and unflinching. "Because I want to understand you," he said. Lyra's heart skipped. Understand her? Humans didn't care about understanding. They killed, they conquered. Her mind spun. Was this some trick? She stayed silent, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of fear in her voice. The human extended a hand holding out a small container of water. Lyra hesitated, suspicion warring with thirst. Finally, she took it, her fingers brushing against his. The cool water soothed her parched throat, and for a moment she could forget the war, the pain, the fear. "You're injured," the human said. "You need medical attention." Lyra stared at him, shocked. He wanted to help? Humans didn't help aliens, they killed them. She shook her head slightly. "I don't need anything. Leave me to die if that is what you wish." He smiled faintly, not cruel, not mocking. "I don't wish to kill you. I don't wish for you to die here. You're alive, and that matters. All life matters." She looked at him, confusion and disbelief twisting her features. Every story she had heard about humans had taught her the opposite. And yet, here was a man offering compassion in a moment when she expected nothing but death. The next hours were strange. The human, whose name she learned was Kale, guided her to a small makeshift shelter they had set up in the wreckage of her fleet. Other humans watched them cautiously but did not interfere. Kale provided food, water, and basic medical care, cleaning her wounds with careful hands. Lyra flinched at the touch, unaccustomed to such kindness. Each act of care made her question what she had believed all her life. Night fell and the sky turned a dark purple, streaked with stars she had never seen from her home planet. Lyra lay on the ground, wrapped in a blanket Kale had provided. Her mind was restless, filled with images of her family, her fleet, her destroyed world. And yet she could not stop thinking about him. This human who had spared her life, fed her, tended her injuries. The sound of approaching footsteps made her sit up abruptly. Kale returned, alert and serious, gesturing for her to stay down. Outside, a group of hostile aliens, her own species, were attacking the human base, seeking to eliminate any survivors. Kale's soldiers moved with precision, firing with disciplined accuracy. Lyra felt fear rise again, but this time it was tempered by determination. She would not die without trying to help. Kale glanced at her, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded, and together they moved to confront the threat. Lyra had been trained in combat all her life, and despite her fear, she acted. She picked up a weapon left behind by a fallen soldier and joined the fight. The humans fought with skill and coordination, and Kale was at the center, directing movements, saving his soldiers, and making sure no one was left behind. During the chaos, an alien warrior charged toward Kale, their weapon raised. Lyra didn't hesitate. She leapt in front of him, deflecting the attack with her own weapon, taking a blow to her shoulder in the process. Pain flared, but she ignored it, driven by a strange new feeling, a sense that this human was not just a commander but someone worth protecting. Kale looked at her, eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. "You saved me," he said. Lyra's chest heaved with heavy breaths. I didn't want you dead," she admitted quietly, her voice almost foreign to her ears. She had never spoken like this to a human before, never expressed concern, but now it slipped out, unguarded and honest. The battle ended with the attackers retreating, and Lyra and Kale stood amidst the wreckage, breathing heavily, their bodies sore and covered in dust. For the first time, Lyra saw him not as a monster, but as a human capable of bravery, strategy, and even compassion. Kale offered her a hand. "Come with me. You'll be safe here." She hesitated, torn between the fear of humans and the strange sense of trust she felt toward him. Slowly, she took his hand. In that moment, Lyra realized that her life had changed. The humans were not what she had believed, and Kyle had shown her that courage and mercy could coexist. She had braced for death at human hands, yet she was alive, and the experience had left a mark deeper than any wound. As night deepened, Lyra sat beside Kyle, watching the stars. She felt a strange sense of peace, something she had never felt on the battlefield. Fear was still there, but it was mingled with curiosity, trust, and the beginnings of understanding. Perhaps humans were not monsters. Perhaps they were something more. And as she looked at Kyle, she realized that what he had done, spared her life, treated her with care, respected her strength, had begun to change her forever. The wind howled outside the shelter, carrying with it the scent of war and dust. But inside, Lyra felt something new, a fragile hope, a sense that life could still hold unexpected surprises, even in the darkest moments. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where humans and aliens might not be enemies, where trust could exist, and where courage could come in forms she had never anticipated. And as she closed her eyes to rest, she knew that tomorrow, whatever came, she would face it differently. Not as a terrified prisoner, but as someone who had glimpsed what humans could truly be.